First off, though, I want to spend a little bit of time with Scott Brennan, and I want to support what it is he's doing, because he is bringing the future of local media to North County in particular. In the last couple of years, Scott has set up 2 online papers, the Paso Robles Daily News and the A-Town Daily News, formerly called the Atascadero Daily News. And the beauty of this operation is that, like Calcoast News, you can't get this anywhere in a store or newsstand or whatever. The only place you can get it is online. And apparently, Scott's doing pretty well because he's already drawn some shots from his competitors. Anyway, let's meet Scott Brennan. Here he is now. Hey, Scott.
Hey, how you doing, Dave?
Well,
Thank you for having me on the show.
Sure. Congratulations on your initial success.
Thank you. Business is going well.
Let's talk a little bit about your background prior to starting up the 2 online newspapers. What should we know about you, Scott?
Sure. I started out in the newspaper business in 1995. I was a reporter, an editor, and publisher in Watsonville, California for the Register-Pajaronian. I worked for News Media Corporation and was promoted to a publisher of South Monterey County newspapers. So I ran 4 newspapers there.
Right.
And then in 2006, I left to start my own advertising and marketing company here in Paso Robles. We started with a local phone book called North County Access. Then we built on that and launched a county visitor's guide. And then we launched a handful of other directories. And in 2011, we realized how important it was going to be to start helping our clients market themselves online. And we started this Paso Robles Daily News in 2012 so that we could provide advertising opportunities and so that we could provide local news the way people want it. At the time, the local newspapers up here were not publishing the stories online in a way that was accessible to readers. They weren't putting it out onto Facebook, onto Twitter. They weren't providing emails on a daily basis. And so that's what we did. And since 2012, our Paso Robles Daily News can grow and be successful. And, in fact, last month was our highest traffic month ever with 250,000 views. And we have 3,500 daily email subscribers. And so this year, in May, we decided to launch something for Atascadero. We branded it in a similar fashion and called it the Atascadero Daily News. And that's when, out of the blue, I got this voicemail message that some of your listeners might have heard.
Yeah, we're going to play that in a minute. That was from John Tompkins?
Yeah, John Tompkins is the owner of News Media Corporation, the company that I worked for. I didn't work for him directly, but I did know him, and he would fly out here on a corporate jet once in a while to make sure things were going well. He was an inspiration to me at the time. He was somebody I looked up to for how successful he was in the media business. And so I was really taken aback and shocked by this threatening phone call that I got from him.
Well, why don't we go ahead and play it? And when did you get this call, Scott?
I got this in June 18th, and I really wasn't sure what to do with it. I sent it to my family and some friends and said, what do you guys think about this? And a few of them said it's so threatening I should file a police report. But I really didn't take it as a threat to my personal safety, but I did take it as a serious threat to my livelihood.
Yeah. Well, this goes for about a minute. So this is a voice message that John Tompkins, president of the News Media Corporation, left for you last June. Goes about a minute. Let's give it a listen.
Scott, John Tompkins calling. I, for some reason, have just woke up and finally looked at what you're doing against us in Paso Robles, now Atascadero. We've tolerated your phone book presence, such like that, for a while. By the way, you're doing a really good job. I don't think you're making much money with these internet sites. But you've got my attention now, and so I'll be coming after you, and personally. And I am sorry I came to this. It shouldn't have to. But, you know, frankly, this is a direct assault on us. And so I look forward to meeting on the field. I'll be probably moving out there. There are people out there, and they will be so involved that you likely will be overwhelmed. And it wasn't necessary. You know, you're making good money in the phone book business. Jason messed up with us, but we fired him. He's done. This is a tough deal. If you want to go to war with us, we'll go to war. And so wish you luck. I like you. You're a good man. You've done a good job with the phone book business, but this is now you're getting into our knickers. So talk to you later. Bye.
I can't recall a guy ever using the phrase knickers before. Wow.
I have to say, in addition to being surprising, it was just odd a little bit.
Well, and he does say, I'm coming after you personally. He does make that clear.
Yeah. And hopefully what he meant is then he said he's moving here to, come after me. But, what I really took it as is an anti-competitive kind of a bully maneuver where he's saying I'm bigger and better than you. Here's a guy who owns more than 70 newspapers around the country. He works at his corporate office outside of Chicago. He's got hundreds and hundreds of employees, makes millions of dollars, and he's directed his attention at me, a former employee who's operating a small news site that has I gave you what the stats are. I think
Right.
We're doing better than him, better than his properties here online. But it's still just a really small competitive threat relative to his overall business.
So since June 18th, Scott, have you seen any difference from your competitor? Have they indeed stepped up their game?
I'm not sure if they've stepped up their game on how they're delivering news to people. What they did do, after I got this voicemail message, I really hadn't decided what to do with it. And then I think it was a couple weeks ago, he had a big San Francisco law firm send me a cease and desist letter about our name that we were using, which was the Atascadero Daily News. And that cease and desist letter basically said that he owned the trademark rights to the term Atascadero Daily News because he owns a property in Atascadero that's called the Atascadero News. Mm-hmm. And it turns out no one has either of those names trademarked with the U.S. government. And so what I did is I called a couple friends of mine who are business attorneys and said, hey, am I infringing here? And both of them told me that I had a pretty good case if I wanted to defend myself and this brand that I'm building. But ultimately, it would not be worth it for me to fight a legal battle with someone who could outspend me 100 times.
Sure. Scott Brennan on this broadcast. So the big question, how do I read the A-Town Daily News?
Well, if you go to A-Town Daily News, you can subscribe and become one of our daily email subscribers. And if you are on Twitter, you can also follow us on Twitter. You can become a fan on Facebook, and you can read the local news. We deliver more local news than anybody's doing in North County. Right. We've become a trusted source up here with our A-Town Daily News site and also our Paso Robles Daily News site.
And same thing. You can sign up for both the Paso Robles Daily News and the A-Town Daily News. And that's the only way to get this because you don't publish a traditional newspaper.
Yes, we're not printing it on paper. We recognized the trend that's happening in media, which is that people want to have their news quick. They want it to be quality, and they want it to be on their cell phones and online.
And they want it to be now.
They want it to be now.
Because a newspaper can only give you yesterday's news.
Correct.
They can't give you what's going on now.
Correct, and that's what we're trying to do.
All right. And Scott, do you know anything about your demographic? Do you know anything about who your audience is?
Well, we know our audience is in Paso Robles, and that's what we're going after. We know our audience is a lot of the business folks in town, our subscribers. I don't have income demographics or anything like that, but we know that people who are interested in news are generally of a more educated background and a higher income demographic.
All right. Scott Brennan on this broadcast. So what is like your 5-year plan for these 2 online news sites?
Well, my 5-year plan will be to continue to do what we're doing, to continue to grow. We're growing every month, to continue to build our advertising base, and then to expand. I think this is it's a good business model. It does take time to build. The Paso Robles Daily News wasn't profitable the first year we launched it, but by year 2 it was, and so we'll continue to build on that.
And when you were setting these up, did you model this after any other online newspapers?
I'm not going to say that it was an entirely original thought, but we put all the pieces together ourselves. We did look at what other people were doing, and we just didn't think anyone was doing as good of a job as they could be doing.
All right. But I guess what I'm asking then, Scott, is this operation like yours more and more common around the country? Are we seeing more online news sites?
It's definitely a growing market, no question about it. And I haven't followed what other people are doing outside of our market necessarily, so I can't give you a real good answer on that. But it's becoming more and more popular for obvious reasons. And the traditional media, I think, is a little bit slow to embrace it and to get ahead of the curve because I think that their profit centers are still based in print, and they haven't figured out how to make a profit online. So that's why by starting online and by forcing ourselves to have to make a profit online, it keeps us focused on that strategy.
I mean, that really is a great point. I'd like to come back to that. I mean, whether it's the Tribune or New Times or newspapers nationally, they've not been able to figure out how to make money off the Internet. They try all sorts of different things, even the LA Times, and it just doesn't seem to work. Why is that, Scott?
You know, it is a tough business. As you know, media is a tough business. I worked at printed newspapers. I love printed newspapers. I wish that was the way it was going to be forever, but I know it's not, and that's not what people are looking for. People want the news now, and they want it to be quick and easy and accurate and quality, and that's what we're working on. I don't know. Do you have any solutions, Dave?
No, I'm in radio, but it's that idea that the paywall rarely works. I will not pay for news because I'm used to getting it for free. Like with the Tribune, I had a subscription to the Tribune, and I stopped in 2003, and for 12 years now, I just read it online. And without giving away any secrets, even when the paywall comes up, it's real easy to get around.
It is pretty easy to get around. I know what you're talking about there. And the two newspapers in our market here have a paywall that's even harder, that you can't get around. And it's kind of a cumbersome approach. And I think that's why we've been able to fill this niche, is because that news simply was not available to people. So we're providing something that they could not get.
And
people want free news.
That's a great point, Scott, because for a while we were using that Paso Robles paper, and they threw up the wall, and fine, we'd go somewhere else.
Right.
You know, we wouldn't use them as a news source. And I think they were making a huge mistake.
You've got a great point. I think that maybe the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal have figured out how to use a paywall right, and the New York Times is doing it. I think last time I looked, about 50% of their revenues is from circulation, which is extremely high for a newspaper's revenue base, and it's because they've successfully integrated that paywall. And I personally pay $15 a month so that I can read the New York Times on my phone, and I love it. I'm willing to pay it, but most people are not willing to pay for their local news. Scott
Brennan on this broadcast. He runs Access Publishing. They, in turn, run A-Town Daily News and the Paso Robles Daily News, both online publications. Did John Tompkins ever apologize or follow up on that phone message to you, Scott?
The only follow-up that I read was a short article they published in their newspaper after I published this voicemail and also the cease and desist letter. And in that article, he said he apologized if there was any misunderstanding of his voicemail message. That's really all I can say. But I think the words speak for themselves.
Sure. And how did you take that message? I mean, clearly it's a good thing, Scott, in a way, because he is now taking you seriously as a competitor. He wouldn't waste his time if he didn't.
Yeah, it was a compliment in that sense, but in another sense, it was just an anti-competitive threat that I wasn't sure how to deal with, and that, you know, I believe in free and fair competition, and the way he was speaking to me in that message didn't sound in free and fair competition. It sounded like he had had enough of me and had enough of the competition that I was giving him. And I was worried that he was going to take action, and that's exactly what he ended up doing.
Right. And more people are getting their news on their phones, aren't they? That's a whole new world to me.
Yeah, so we use Google Analytics to see where our traffic's coming from, and about 50% of our traffic is on mobile phones, and it just continues to grow. It's pretty phenomenal.
All right. Are we going to have the traditional newspapers 5 years from now, Scott? What's your crystal ball say?
You know, I think that just like every other form of media, there's an obituary written for the old media.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, when TV, people said it would kill radio, and maybe it hurt radio, but it didn't kill it. And people said cable was going to kill TV, and people said the internet was going to kill TV, and it just goes on. And I think that newspapers will survive for some time in some form, but they're not going to be as successful or profitable or as big and powerful as they have been. That's for sure.
Well, I also think that the other good part about this is that these guys are now taking you seriously which means they got to step up their game. So the North County wins no matter what they get their news from, because these guys now have a serious competitor in you.
You know, that's what happens in competition. And I told my wife when I first got this voicemail message, I thought, well, the worst thing could happen would be if they improved everything they're doing and really competed with us online, because we've been doing it pretty well for a long time.
I lived in Atascadero for 8.5 years, and the whole time up there, Scott, I kept waiting for a newspaper to come in and challenge the Tribune in the North County. And it never happened, and now it looks like you're the closest thing. And you're doing it smart because you're strictly online. That's the way to do it.
Thank you. Yeah, we're working on it.
Yeah. Anything else? Oh, well, the last question. What about editorial approach? I mean, are you one of these good news people? Do you have a slant that you bring? Are you trying to bring change to the North County? Do you have an agenda, Scott?
I don't have an agenda. I'd like to be an objective news source. We haven't run, I can't even think of an editorial that we've run with our opinion, where we welcome everyone's opinion and we want to publish everyone's opinion and let people decide for themselves. And we're just going to try to continue to be as objective as we can. One thing I did want to say is that I'm really sincerely grateful for the tremendous amount of support that we've received from the community. When people heard the way our competitor was treating us, we received hundreds of new subscribers. We received hundreds of messages, emails, texts of people saying, what can we do? How can we support you? We're there for you. And I'm just really grateful for that.
Well, as it should be. You know, that's the way it should be. This is uncalled for. He wants to compete with you. There are ways to compete with you legitimately. He doesn't have to call and it's just in the knickers. That's just silly. As somebody else from Illinois, I apologize for him. All right, Scott, one last time. How do I get the A-Town Daily News and the Paso Robles Daily News online?
Just go to our website, PasoRoblesDailyNews.com or ATownDailyNews.com, and on the right-hand column, scroll down till you see subscribe. Punch in your email address. You'll get an email to confirm, and you'll start receiving it every morning.
There you go. Scott Brennan, good luck. Thanks for joining us. Final thoughts, sir?
I'm just looking forward to, free and fair competition, and I welcome it. I think it's healthy.
Good for you. I agree. Thank you, Scott Brennan. Appreciate your time. Scott Brennan checking in. North County is heating up in more ways than one. This is Hometown Radio for the Central Coast. It is the Dave Congalton Show.